All right, good afternoon. This is Unit 5. This is the first lecture of Unit 5, which is on the atomic structure and the periodic tables, where we begin. We eventually get into Lewis structures, all the way then into intermolecular forces. This is pretty much a review unit. There are a couple small little new topics that I'll cover that fit very well with this. It doesn't take long for students to understand what they are. But the key thing in this unit is that you do the practice homework problems just to get enough reps that you can, again, bring all this information back to the forefront and be able to take questions and answer questions on it. So the first lecture for today is looking at the Bohr model of the atom. And the Bohr model of the atom is what you probably came to this class with, where you have in the center of the atom is the nucleus, and that's where the protons and neutrons, the subatomic particles, are found. An unstable nucleus causes a isotope of an atom to be unstable, and that causes radioactive decay, which is not covered to a great extent on the national exam. What we really focus on is the electrons. The electrons causes bonding, and electron movement also is what this first section is all about. These rings around the nucleus are called energy levels, or shells. So the rings are, in the test, I would not use the word rings, I would say energy levels. So the first ring around the nucleus, which is the closest to the nucleus, shell 1, or I would rather you say energy level 1, is the closest the electron can get to the nucleus. The further out it gets, the more and more energetic the electron is. So an electron that's further out compared to one that's closer in, this one here would be a higher energy electron because it is in a greater, higher energy level. Okay? Electrons cannot exist in between these energy levels. For an electron to move out to another orbital, it has to absorb energy. And that energy can be any part of the electromagnetic radiation spectrum, which we'll talk about here in a second. So for an electron to move out, it has to absorb energy. For an excited state electron to move back down, it must release energy. And the amount of energy that is released is equal to the amount that it absorbs to make that same exact transition. Okay? And that's the Bohr model of the atom. Now, all right, so on your green sheets in this entire Unit 5, there literally are only two equations, and we're talking about them today already. Most of the rest of this unit is going to be drawing Lewis structures, bond angles, discussing intermolecular forces, mostly concepts. This is not a very heavy mathematical unit. So this first homework is very important, that you start getting some of this mathematical work down. These exactly look how they look on your green sheet. This little V symbol is the frequency, which is given as numbers of waves per second, or number per second. Something per second is called a hertz. So 1 over s, 1 over seconds, is equal to a hertz, which you might have heard of hertz before in frequencies, like radio frequency that you dial in your radio to. The speed of light is c. It's given on the green sheet. It is a constant. The speed of light does not change. We assume it travels in a vacuum. For physics, it does change depending upon what medium it travels through, but for the sake of the national exam, the speed of light will always be 2.998 times 10 to the 8th meters per second. The lambda is the wavelength, and E is the energy, and it's the energy of a single photon. So if I had one particle of light, how much energy does it have? That's the E value. And H is another constant. It's called Planck's constant. And it is given to you also on the green sheet as 6.626 to the negative 34th joule seconds. All right? So here are the equations that are given to you on the green sheets. It's a matter of plug and chug. And the most important thing they typically do is they change units on you. There's a lot of unit analysis involved here. The plug and chug part gets pretty simple, but you have to make sure that the units match. Okay, so let's look at an example problem to finish off today. So a wavelength of radiation of yellow has a wavelength of 589 nanometers. What is the frequency of this radiation? So the wavelength was given to us. We want to figure out the frequency. Well, if I look up here, the equation that I want to use is the one that would include both those variables. Since I do know the wavelength and the speed of light is a given, I can easily find the frequency. And the frequency then would be the speed of light divided by the wavelength. Here's the issue. You'll notice that the speed of light is in meters and the wavelength is in nanometers. And this is what they often do. Students will just blindly divide these numbers and they don't check for units. So the homework especially does a lot of this, and that's why I recommend that you do it. 589 nanometers. You are expected on the national exam to know nanometers. 1 meter equals a billion nanometers. Just like 1 kilojoule equals 1,000 joules, and 1 liter equals 1,000 milliliters. These are the 3 metric conversions they expect you to know for the national exam. We've already covered 2 of them. You have to know that nano means a billion. So 1 billion nanometers per meter. We're going to divide the nanometers by a billion to get it into meters. And we get 5.89 times 10 to the negative 7th meters. Now the speed of light, 2.998 times 10 to the 8th meters per second. Now we are in meters, and our wavelength is in meters. So I'm going to pull up my calculator here and punch that in. And I get 5.09 times 10 to the, times 10 to the 14th 1 over s. The meters cancel. I'm left with inverse seconds. Okay, that would be okay. That'd be fine to label as that. Or what you'll often see it labeled as is hertz. 5.09 times 10 to the 14th hertz. Okay, what are the units on frequency again? Unit of frequencies is 1 over s or hertz, either one. All right, now we know the frequency of this radiation source, and now we're asked to calculate the energy of a photon, which is E. E equals Planck's constant times the frequency. So Planck's constant is 6.626 times 10 to the negative 34th joule seconds times 5.09 times 10 to the 14th hertz. Now again, remember hertz is 1 over s. So seconds and 1 over seconds will cancel. The hertz will cancel the seconds, and we'll be left with an energy value that's going to be in joules. So we'll take that final answer we just had and times it by Planck's constant. And we get 3.37 times 10 to the negative 19th joules. Now that is the energy of just 1 photon, which is just like saying the mass of 1 atom. It's a tiny amount because it's only 1 photon. More than likely, we're going to be calculating a mole of photons, just like a mole of an element. So if I want to know the energy in kilojoules for a mole of photons, I now just have to multiply this. So this is joules per photon. Well, if I want to get this into joules per mole, there are Avogadro's numbers of photons in 1 mole. Just like taking number of atoms and converting it to moles. So I'm going to multiply this by Avogadro's number. And this gives me 203,000 joules per mole. They want it kilojoules. So dividing this by 1,000, this yellow light would possess 203 kilojoules of energy per mole of photons if it was shined on you. Okay, so 203 kilojoules per mole would be the amount of energy that a mole of this yellow light would possess. Okay, so there are the equations. Now, when an electron moves out from one orbital to the next, if I know the energy associated with, in this case, the 3rd ring, and it's moving out to the energy of the 5th ring, if I subtract those 2 values, the energy of shell 5 from the energy of shell 3. This would give me the change in energy, the amount of energy needed to be absorbed to cause this transition. Well, if I know the amount of energy that would cause that exact transition, I could then use this equation to figure out what frequency of energy source, or I could then use the other equation to figure out what wavelength. I could figure out the exact energy and wavelength and frequency needed to transition that electron from the third floor to the 5th floor. That's the same amount of energy that it would release when it goes from the 5th floor back to the 3rd floor. So every transition in an atom, in an electron shell, is a different, specific, exact amount of energy. And that's called Planck's rule. So with that, it's an exact amount of energy. If we put an energy source that's a little bit above or below, the electron will not transition. It has to be the exact amount of energy to cause that exact transition. And we can now use these equations to figure out the exact wavelength or frequency of radiation necessary to cause that transition to occur. And that's the Bohr model of the atom with electron transitions. Okay? Please do the homework problems. It will give you much practice going into the... This is one of the only few mathematical parts of this unit. It's really important that you're able to utilize these equations. It looks easy, but trust me, the problems I have some easy ones, some harder ones. Do them, check the answer keys, and really get a good foothold on the math of this unit. All right, thanks for listening. Electromagnetic radiation, this is a page you don't have, but you can easily look it up on Google. Electromagnetic radiation is any energy source that can travel through space, a vacuum. The spectrum goes from radio waves to TV, microwaves, infrared, which is body heat. You glow in the infrared spectrum because you give off body heat. The visible light spectrum, UV, X-rays, and gamma, and I totally screwed this up. Visible light then is broken down into red light all the way to purple light. Now, the waves that are furthest to the left, the radio waves, these waves have the longest wavelength, as you can see here. A wavelength, which is given by this Greek letter called lambda, is the distance from one crest to another crest, or one trough to another trough. They are both equally the same. That is called a wavelength, or the length of one wave. It's usually measured in meters. When I go across from radio waves to gamma rays, the wavelength gets shorter. So you can see right here what a shorter wavelength would look like. Because it gets shorter, it has a higher energy, or a higher frequency. The frequency is defined as the number of crests that pass a given spot each second. So frequency is the number of crests that pass per second. And the energy then is also higher. So gamma rays have the highest energies and highest frequencies, and they have the shortest wavelengths. Radio waves can be miles and miles in length. They are very low energy and very low frequency particles. Okay? But this spectrum, just like a rainbow, they blur into each other. It isn't like there's starts and stops. Just like the rainbow, it goes from red, goes so minorly into orange, the yellow, all the way to eventually to purple. Okay? So any of this radiation is electromagnetic radiation, and the key thing you got to look at is knowing wavelengths, frequencies, and energies. Okay? One other thing you might be need to know is in visible light, when you separate it out, which part of visible light has got like a lower, shorter wavelength or higher energy. You kind of do need to know a little bit about which one is which. Key thing I look at is red is aligned with radio. Okay, and the further you go right, you're getting closer to gamma, just like green for gamma. It's a way you can hopefully know your colors. So red light has got the shortest wavelengths. Red light has the longest wavelengths. Purple light's got the shortest wavelengths, but purple light is the most energetic. Red light is the least energetic of the different visible light spectrums.